Bonjour, Kinamagi and Ireland Indigenous, and welcome to this episode of the My Math Network. Today's episode, convert customary units of length. Let's begin today's session by reviewing our previous assignment, and this is the answers. When we measure the length of each of to the nearest half inch and quarter inch, in the case of a marble, they both came out at closest to 1 inch. That means that it would have been in between, closer to 1 than it was to 3/4 of an inch. And obviously, if it's over that far, both measurements would be an inch. And our doggy bone here, both was closest to 2.5 inches on both measurements, half and quarter. Find the length of each object to the nearest half inch and quarter inch. Well, this one could be interesting as we have different devices, but the width of an MP3 player, which I mentioned, you could also just go ahead and use your cell phone because it's not 1999 and most of you aren't walking around with an MP3 player. MP3s were music. The example one was 2.5 inches or closer to 2.25, but your answer might have been different. If you're not sure on either 3 or 4, feel free to show me the item and measure it in front of me. Length of a stapler, 6 inches and 5 3/4 inches. Those answers would vary based on which stapler you use and where you get it and all of those details. Numbers 5 and 6, you should draw a line with a segment of about 2.25 inches and 3/4 of an inch. If you did this using the Google form, please make sure you show me your lines. It'll be kind of tough, but at least I can eyeball if you're in the ballpark here. 7, the correct way to complete it. The length is the measurement of distance between 2 points. Now the problem solving, 11.25 to the nearest quarter inch and 11 inches to the nearest half inch. Which measurement is more precise? 11.25. And because basically the bigger the unit fraction, so 1/4 is going to be more exact than a half inch. 1/3 is going to be more exact than a quarter. 1/5 is going to be better than a quarter. 1/6, 1/1000th. The bigger your denominator, the more exact it is, assuming it's a unit fraction. Allison has a ruler is marked in 1/4 of an inch and a large measure that is marked in 1/2 of an inch. Which measuring tool more precise? The ruler, because it's quarter inch. And the final one, who used a more precise measurement? It's going to be Steve because he went to a quarter inch instead of a whole inch. Today's assignment, we're going to be looking at converting customary units of length, and you might have heard this term imperial measurement. We use both terms. During our math enrichment, we called it imperial so that you were familiar. Here, we're going to refer to it exclusively as customary units of length. That way you're hearing both and have heard both. And you can see that division will play a role, as will multiplication. You're going to need to know the conversion between miles and yards, yards and inches, inches and yards, how many feet and inches are in 110 inches. So you're going to need to know what to divide by. This is not always the easiest assignment in the free world, but it is doable. It might take you 2 problems to get there, depending on the thing. Like if we're going yards, you might go yards to feet, feet to inches. But if you know how many inches are in a yard, you could skip that step. And in this case, there are 36 inches and 3 feet. So you could just go 7 times 36 and go right on over it. Then we have best answer, which one's not a common. Which operation necessary to convert a smaller unit to a larger unit? See some charts to read, and there are 11 total problems. So let me get into the actual lesson today. And our essential question in this chapter is, how can I use measurement conversions to solve real world problems? Trust me, you will actually use this in the real world. Anytime you need to go to Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever to purchase things, it's not always going to be in the units that you're comfortable with. You're going to need to be able to convert in order to either get the best deal for your money or get the correct length. It all depends. Let's get into the investigation part. What do I do if this is not in your book yet? What do you do if there is a remainder when converting customary units of length? Well, it depends. I could go with a fraction or decimal. Like if I knew a mile was 5,280 feet and I had 5,282 feet, I could see 1 mile and 2, or I could say 1 and 1 over 2640. Or I could just say I have 1 mile, 2 feet. So you have options. And which option you use is going to kind of depend on the situation. I don't need to be that specific that I know, okay, I've got 5,281 feet. Suddenly I've got 1 and 5,280th miles. There's very few times that you're going to need to be that exact in the world. And this is not going to be one of those days. So I'd say a mile and a foot in that situation. All right, a running race is 13,200 feet. How many miles is this? Follow the steps below to find the solution. So first, I know that there are 5,280 miles or feet in a mile. I know that I'm going to need at least 2 miles here because I just used in my head 5,200 and 5,200 is 10,400. 3 would go too much. So if I get my exact measurement of 5,280 times 2. 6, carry the 1, 5, which is 10,560. Oh, my original problem, I also could do is 13,200 divided by 5,280. And I've opted to do it a little differently. So I'm going to have 2 miles. And the 13 up to get to 13,200. Get a 0. I'm going to regroup, get a 1. So that's going to become a 10. 10 minus 6 is 4. Going to regroup again, get a 2 and an 11, 6. And my remainder is 2,640. So my distance is 2 miles, 2,640. But then I stop and ask myself, what is 2,640? In this instance, I look at it and I'm like, wait a minute, 2640. 26 times 2 is 52. 40 times 2 is, this is a half of a mile right here. So I could have said 2 miles, 2,640 feet. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and turn it into a fraction, 2.5 miles. Because if I look at you and say, hey, you're going to run 2 miles and 2,640 feet, you're going to be like, huh? But if I tell you, hey, run 2.5 miles, suddenly I can do that without having to get out a tape measure. I'd know that if I was running around the high school track, that suddenly I just have to do 10 laps because that's 2.5 miles. Whereas otherwise I'd be like, okay, I've got 8 laps in, but how do I know where 2,640 feet end? This will be the way to go. But it's not always going to be that case. So let's go ahead and clear it. You can see there. And even though we didn't write it the same way, we kind of did the same thing here. We know that 2,640 over 5,280 would be 1/2 of a mile. express the solution in fraction and decimal. So we have 2 whole, and we already said it was 2.5 miles. And 2.5 is equal to 2 5/10, which is 2.5 miles. So a half a mile, or half of anything, in decimal form is 0.5, because we could turn that up, multiply top and bottom by 5 and get 5/10. See that there? Equivalent. So this could be fun part here. 40 feet. Let's see how we want to go from this route. 23 yards. Okay, so 23 yards. I'm going to multiply by 3, which gives me 69 feet. How many inches? Oh, I see 69 feet. Let's go with that. There's a measurement there. 40 feet is 4 times 12 is 480, or 48 plus a 0, 480 inches. 96 inches. 96 divided by 12 is 8 feet. 36 yards. And this one would be fun. 36 times, well, let's skip right to this. We know it's going to be by default because there's only 2 answers left. But what you'd have to do is go 36, so 36 squared. Because 36 inches in a yard, 36 times 36, 1296. And no, I did not have that number in my head. I simply just took it from what was left here. And 126 inches, 126 divided by 12 is going to be 10, remainder 6, which is 10.5 feet. Now I'm able to do this pretty quickly. You are going to probably take a little more time. It's just the natural. I have a couple extra centuries of time with it than you may have here in the 5th grade. But once you start learning that there are 12 inches equal a foot, let's just get right to here. 3 feet equal a yard. 5,280 feet equal a mile. 1,760 yards equal a mile. That's 5,280 divided by 3 right there. I know a yard is 36 inches. So I can start converting amongst these different units. It is something that the more frequently you do it, the stronger you will be at it. When resources are available, feel free to use them to make sure you're being able to convert. All right, let's get into the textbook here. Pardon me. It's going to be page 807. There is some highlighted words here in the key concept box, and it's a reminder of what I just said here. Of a foot equals 12 inches, a yard equals 3 feet or 36 inches, and a mile equals 5,280 feet or 1,760 yards. It's good to have that somewhere available to you, even if you need to write it down. If you keep a math journal, this would be the spot for it. It's also a yellow word of you can convert measurements. You change from one unit to another, and that's what we mean by convert. So if I want to know how many inches were in a foot, and or how many feet I have, and I have 48 inches, I know how to go from feet to inches here. All right. Sorry. Example basic. For many of the thrill rides at amusement parks, riders must be at least 48 inches tall. Cheng is 4 feet tall. Is he tall enough to ride a thrill ride at the amusement park? So I want to go from feet to inches. So if you go to your local amusement park, it's generally written in inches. And I know there are 12 inches in a foot. So I multiply 12 times 4, and that gives me 48. 48 inches is 4 feet. Is he tall enough? Well, Yes, just barely. You could check your answer. Right, you could probably do this one in your head. Let's have to write down the 8. Yep, works out perfect. So make sure you write in those measurements there. Just a reminder, once I say I'm going to clear the screen, it gives you just a few seconds heads up. If you need to pause the video, go for it. If you fail to pause the video in time, you can always just rewind the video just a hair and then pause it there. I'm going to go ahead and clear the screen. You see the answer key. This is the document, the words that I was talking about, and this is the customary system. It is different than the metric system where everything is based on powers of 10. We'll be talking about that at another time. And you may have seen it during math enrichment. All right, so here's a math problem for us. Make sure you're filling it as we go. Convert 42 inches into feet. And there are 12 inches in a foot, so I'm going to do 42 divided by 12. 12 does not go into 4, so I go over to 42. I remember that 4 times 4 was 48 on the previous example, but 48 is bigger than 42, so let's start at 3. 3 times 12 is 36. 42 to minus 36 is 6. My remainder is 6. What will I do with it? I could say 3 feet 6 inches. Or, well, let's figure that out on the next slide. Think about other options. Make sure this is written in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and clear the screen. One way is to write the remainder in inches. So the remainder 6 means there are 6 inches left over. I could say it's 3 foot 6 inches. And that is completely acceptable in most contexts. All right, make sure that's written in, and we're going to move forward. Another way is to write it as a fraction. And remember, since we're dividing 12 inches into 42, our denominator is 12, because that's the divisor. The remainder was 6, I had 6 12s. That simplifies to 1/2. So I could say 3 1/2 feet. Go ahead and write all that in. Give you a moment to do that. And then we will go ahead into a couple practice ones. And we'll have a little more opportunity for practice than normal. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move forward. I want you to do this problem. You can pause the video if you need to, do the math, and then come back and check your answer. You may pause now. Welcome back. And our answers was 5. So 60 inches equals 5 feet. You can check that work, because 5 times 12 is 60. Next one. 16 yards equals how many feet? And they remind you here that we're going to be multiplying by 3 because there are 3 feet in a yard. Go ahead and pause the video and solve it now. All right, let's check the answer. 48 feet. Explain how to convert units from feet to inches. We multiply by 12 because we're going from bigger to smaller, so that's multiplication. If we're going from inches to feet, we divide by 12 because we're going from a smaller unit to a bigger. All right, I'd like you to practice numbers 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to do a few here, and then we're going to jump down to number 12 after. So go ahead and do 3, 4, and 5. Pause the video. I'll see you on the other side. Welcome back. 72 inches is how many feet? We divide by 12. We get 6 feet. 19 yards is how many inches? I'm going to multiply by 36. Now, this is really close to where we start using calculators. And that's okay in some contexts, as long as you know the conversion here. But we end up with 684 inches. And number 5, 40 inches is how many feet? 3 times 6 is 36. There are 4 inches left over. 4 twelfths is simplified into 1/3, 3 1/3 feet. Let's drop down here just a bit to number 12. I want you to use less than, greater than, or equal to make a true statement. Go ahead and do number 16 as well. So 12, 13, 14, and 16. You can pause the video. I'll see you on the other side. Welcome back. If you guessed that because 16 was special, it is, because that's an example of equal. It's 2 yards times 36 inches is 72. But back up here, 2 feet is 24 inches plus 3 is 27. So 24 is less than 27. 7 yards, 7 times 3 is 21, which is greater than 20. And this is going to be 1760 times 2. So 3520 is greater than 3500. And like I said, you're going to get more and more fluid with these over time. It may not be fluid yet where it's really easy, but you will get there. At this point, I want you to look at the assignment again, make your conversions. If you need a scratch piece of paper, just ask if you're in person, or if you're at home, grab something to work on and do your figuring, or you could write all over the edge of the paper. Just make sure answers are on the blue line. If you have any further questions, please reach out to me at mireland@psychchipschool.net. Otherwise, have a minnow gijigat, minwa, bamapi.